Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of the UK Connection alongside my good friends Simon Bray. Well, Simon Bray and Steven Reid were all out of order once again. We see when Steven comes late to the Zoom, he winds up down below. It's
It just depends on the order you send the link out, Pete. Do you know? That's tells me what you think. Do you
I have nothing to do with it. It's just who jumps on first, right? Who's on first? What's on second? I don't know who's on third. Third base.
know?
Do you guys get that over on your side of the pond? Abbott and Costello, is that like a thing?
Abbott and Costello were great. Yes, absolutely.
All right, cool. I was hoping I was whacked. Damn it. I was hoping I would throw like an American thing at you guys. And
No, no,
I don't know
no.
what he's
I'm
talking
aware of
about.
that.
You only
That,
perplex
that
me.
sketch is brilliant.
Yeah, doesn't go the other way around for whatever reason. Oh well. Anyway, today's episode. Speaking of things
Hmm.
happening in the UK and not in the US and vice versa, that's exactly what this episode. That was a great segue. I didn't even plan that. Today is all about bands who were really big here, didn't do anything over there, and bands who were really big in the UK didn't do diddly over here. And we're going to try and figure out maybe we have some ideas of why. But before we get to all that, we have a little bit of business to take care of. Simon, what are you drinking?
Thanks for asking. I have got, are you ready for this, kids? Are you ready for this? Oh, yeah. I am climbing all over the Renegade Party bus.
Ooh,
I know. There you go. Yeah. Whoop, whoop, whoop. It's from those good people at Tiny Rebel down there in South Wales. And I've never met a Tiny Rebel I don't like. And this is a super sexy double IPA, 8%. It's Renegade Party bus. I'm going to climb all over that bus for the next, however
we'll see how
long.
much climbing he's able to do after he gets done drinking that, right?
Yeah. You want to see with the color, don't you? Yes, you do. Of course, you look at that.
Oh, see that?
Hmm.
Mm. Okay. Mm. Yes. Mm. Wow. Yeah. I'm just going to give that a number, and I'm going to give that number 3.86452.
I thought it was going to be higher than that with the face you made.
Mm. Well, we'll see how it finishes, won't we? How it ends.
We'll be three-quarters of the way through the episode. He goes, "This is a 4.9."
Some some people review shit that they've only ever heard once, don't they? But Uncle Simon does it loads of times. Just
We all have. We all have. As we break the fourth wall here on the channel once again.
I've never done that.
I,
We've all
I
done.
don't think I ever have. Do you know that? That probably doesn't surprise anyone, but there you go. It says more about me than anything else, I guess. Right, what do I have? Who knows? This is Van Vag or Van Vag Artisan Ale. It's a Morker Schwarzbier. So it's a dark beer. It's a black lager. It's a whatever you want to call it, I suppose. It is 4.4%. It comes from Stockholm, according to my tin here. Quite like the label. Bit weird. Looks like this in the glass. So it looks like it means business.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh, that's actually way more powerful than I anticipated. Mm. Oh yeah, it's very malty. There's lots going on there actually. Quite sweet at the end, chocolatey. Sound really pretentious now. That's really good. Mm.
Pretentious, you. Oh my God, I can't believe that. Really.
Moi, I would say that this is a four. It's a 4 out of 5. That's excellent. It's really good. This is, yeah, I'd have this again.
And
Fabulous.
what's the ABV on that?
4.4.
Oh, that's pretty doable. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. It looks like it should be more than that, if that makes sense. But it's
I
good.
thought the first thing you said was it's kind of strong, but I think yeah, that's more strong flavor and not strong.
Flavorsome, yes, because it's 4.4 and it looks like that. I anticipated it kind of being a bit, maybe slightly wishy-washy. It's not
Not at
wishy-washy.
all.
Lots of flavour. Really good.
Okay, cool. Well, I am kind of following Simon's lead here, and I just happened to find a couple of these in the back of the refrigerator. I don't normally drink this, although I do think it's really good. I'm going to drink from the Newburgh Brewing Company right here in town, a Mega Boss IPA, fresh and juicy. I don't. Before we went on the air, I'm like looking all over for the ABV in this. I have no idea what it is. I do know it's more than what I should be drinking, so it's probably like in the upper sixes to seven. All right, but I have had this before, and it looks like this. It is and I got courtesy of Chad Hutchinson, a Near Fest Apocalypse glass. Very, very fruity smelling, like tangerine and grapefruit and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely delicious. And I absolutely will be fumbling my words by the end of this episode. So, because this is in territory that I don't normally drink, but it was there. I've been staring at it for a while. I had others I could have picked, but I was like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna do it because I was kind of in the mood for something like this. Good for a hot day. Only one though. So, cheers, gentlemen. Down the hatch. Oh, I gotta give it a number. 4.13. It's generally very good. This is one of the best of the local area. So
Yeah, pi plus one. Excellent. Good times.
there you go.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. Stephen, you want to give us another little, I gave a little lead in earlier of what we're talking about today. Maybe you want to introduce the bands that we'll be covering or whatever.
Oh, right, okay. That means involving my memory here. That's a good thing.
Wait,
Yes,
wait,
this was an idea that
wait,
Uncle
Stephen.
Simon. Pardon?
You weren't expecting that, were you?
I
Exactly.
wasn't expecting that, but that's okay because I've got it here anyway. It's in front of me now, so we're all good. Hopefully, this is the correct list. You never know. You never know with the three of us. We'll make it up as we go
Well,
along.
someone changed one of his bands the other day.
Absolutely. So I think that I've got this list correct. It is quite an eclectic list when you look through it. We've got 10 bands that we may or may not get through. Let's see how we go with this. And the idea is we've kind of got three each, but we don't really. We maybe all have ideas. We maybe don't have ideas because some of these bands and some of these artists, I personally don't know well enough to really kind of know. So it'll be a voyage of discovery as we go through. So the band that we are going to discuss in one way or another, thank you, Simon, Grand Funk Railroad. We're going to talk about Suzie Quatro. We're going to talk about Status Quo. We're going to talk about Kansas. We're going to talk about Cliff Richard. We're going to talk about Slade. We're going to talk about Styx, the Doobie Brothers, Journey, and Toto are on there as a wild card. We've kind of apportioned these out into three each, and Toto just kind of there going, but I also should be on this list, along with lots of other bands, I guess. There's lots of possibilities and choices and other acts that people may want to talk about in the comments that would fit into this category very, very easily indeed.
Absolutely. All right. Simon, you want to begin, I guess?
Why not? Why
As you
not?
normally do, right?
Well, that is the format of the show, isn't it? We
Yes.
have the beer, we have a little intro, and then Simon starts. That's the format. So usually about 7 minutes, 28 seconds, the music kicks in.
Yes.
Just saying. Right. So, yes, I messaged you earlier this week, didn't I, Stephen? I said, I could do this loads. I could do thousands of these shows. And you went, I couldn't. So, anyhow, there are, if you look at it, lots and lots of artists that have been really, really big at home and done nothing abroad. You know, all the way through recorded time from the 50s onwards. Have they not? There are lots and lots of those artists. And obviously, us being British, we tend to do that kind of. Oh, he's big in Japan. Oh, that's good, isn't it? That's nice. Or big in Germany. Brilliant. Okay. But we're looking at the US and America, aren't we? And I think what we're going to be discussing tonight at some point will be the changing nature of what is making it, what is success, what is fame these days, because it's
Mhm.
changed over time, hasn't it? It really has, and the measurements that we use have absolutely changed over time, as we will note later. And um, I tried to stay within the SOT paradigm, and then just took myself right out of it because I feel that that's my role. Stand
Nothing
outside
wrong
the
with that.
and when we were batting about, some of the artists we are going to say, I kicked the sweet out because we're going to do Slade, and I think there are similarities there, and I think there are similarities with, that's right, Suzie Quatro. Yay. Got my t-shirt on. Pete's got his Grand Funk t-shirt on. I've got my Suzie Quatro t-shirt. Saw her last year. Absolutely brilliant. Sensational stuff. But Suzie Quatro was only blindingly famous in this country for about 18 months. But during that period, she had number one hit with Can the Can, number three hit with 48 Crash, number one hit with Devilgate Drive, number seven hit um, with The Wild One, and all those songs did precisely sod all in America. Nothing, not a chart position, absolutely nothing. Okay, the only ever hit she ever had in America was with Smokey's Chris Norman, Stumbling In, and that reached number 41 over here. Hmm.
I will tell you for the longest time, whenever I heard Suzie Quatro, the name, I was always like, oh yeah, isn't that the chick who was in like Cream magazine every now and then? I used to see her in the magazines, but I didn't know any of her music. I don't remember hearing anything on the radio. Don't remember seeing her stuff in the album racks. Nothing. Don't remember seeing her playing here. I just, just some name.
I believe she supported Alice Cooper, and she's from Detroit, isn't she? Anyhow, there's an argument to be made, something along the lines of no Susie Quattro, no Runaways, no Joan Jett, etc., etc.,
It's
etc.
100%. Yeah.
So um, why did she not make it in America? Well, she never sold any albums either anywhere, did she? She was a singles artist for that brief period of time, but a sustained success here in the UK. And she's 75 now and still playing, fairly large venues, fairly large venues. Now, is it because she looked like a female version of Elvis, with a leather outfit? Americans don't like to have their own shit force fed back to them, do they?
No, but you know what? The more you think about it, when she was in her kind of prime, was that too early for American audiences to accept a female rock star?
Exactly.
Because really think about it, they were pop stars, but no tough chick female rock star, right? There was
That that was
plenty.
that was the thing, tough chick female rock star.
Yeah.
I can officially confirm that she
I mean,
absolutely
even the
can
Runaways were
for
not
that
big here at
list.
all here, right? I mean, and that came in the wake of her. So it wasn't until, I mean, I guess you could say Heart, right? Um, Maybe Wendy O. Williams a little bit later on to a small extent, but I think Susie Quatro, because I've always heard she paved the way for everybody else, but never got the success that she probably deserved, right?
Yeah, because she is incredibly talented. What I wrote down is hard rocking women, not a thing yet in 1973/74.
Yeah, it's too early. It's way too early. Yeah.
Absolutely. And she came from that, or was involved with that kind of so chinny chap songwriting combo. And most of them didn't make it across to the States. The Sweet didn't really do much over there. Mud didn't do much over there. God, I love Mud. They were very much in contention for a while. Um, so, I think with all these things, it's a matter of timing and, more than anything else, kind of luck. I think that's the big thing. Right place, right time, and getting a hit that people think, oh, that's good. And then you got to kind of sustain that, haven't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, and let me recommend her albums because they're all pretty good except for the live one, which is terrible because there's way too many covers on it. That's a great record. Susie is a four-letter word. Yep. So Susie and other four-letter words, and if you knew Susie, which came out after the glam kind of period, and she worked with some great songwriters, and she could write a tune of her own, and still can. And it perplexes me why she wasn't known for anything other than being Leather Tuscadero in Happy Days over in America.
What was the year of the live album?
Oh God, I
Approximately, is that
oh,
the
mid
mid 70s?
70s.
Have we ever talked about a live album from that era and made that statement that the live album stinks and don't bother with it, right? Because normally most of these artists from that time period, they release a live album in the 70s, we're like, oh, that's the one to get first, right? So how
Yeah,
much of a miss was that, right?
yeah. Recorded in Japan in 1977. Yeah, there's that many covers on it. You know,
Wow.
Heartbreak Hotel, Come Up and See Me, Make Me Smile. You know, why? Why do that? Just
Did she do studio versions of those songs, Sam? I don't know much about Suzie Quatro, so
don't
are
she
they
know?
relevant?
Yes, I think she's recorded every song in the history of mankind at some point.
Because it just feels like an odd move for an artist that has songwriters but can also write her own songs. You put the album out there and it's filled with covers.
There are plenty of covers throughout her catalogue. Usually taking quite a lick and giving a bit of a shit kicking.
Okay.
But the hits were phenomenally successful over here. Like I said, two number ones inside, right in round about a year, and then kind of like, yeah, that's it.
See, it's interesting for me because Suzie Quatro for me is the sort of face that would appear on kids' TV for no apparent reason. I don't really. I know I can. I think I can think of Devilgate Drive and whatever the first one was that you mentioned. And beyond that, I can't tell you a single one of her songs. I'm aware that she was huge here at one point, and she's maintained a presence, but not necessarily for the music. Outside of if you're a fan and you go and listen to her, not I don't mean that she's not making good music, because I don't actually know. But I used to see her on. You'd expect it's the sort of face you'd expect it to pop up on record breakers.
Yes.
You know what I mean, for no apparent reason, and she'd just be there, kind of do something, and it'd be on the next skit that would happen, and you were like, okay, so in my world, I probably didn't even know what she did for a while. Does that make sense?
I would agree. I would agree.
Quite typically of acts of that order, of that era, sorry, they became personalities.
Hmm.
Um, went into light entertainment, didn't they?
Yeah.
For long periods. Did Noddy Holder did acting afterwards, didn't they? And went on the radio. Fairly confident. Susie's been on radio too as well. So they were um, people with more than one string to their bow, probably because they had to. Yeah.
Yes.
The ultimate question we're asking is why did they not make it across the states? And I don't think they were ready for that kind of act just at that point.
Probably.
Probably, yeah.
It's a good choice then.
Yep. So the first one that I'm going to bring is one of the kind of archetypal UK acts for this topic, and that is Status Quo. Is who it is. Not Status Quo, as I'm sure they're called in the US, but Status Quo, and that's part of the
Hey,
problem.
I've been on the right road for a couple of years now.
You certainly have. You have, but the fact that you do, or some people have to be corrected, it's not a good start, is it? And also, the image here doesn't really help. This is four kind of. This looks like four chartered accountants on their day off in the 70s here with the double denim that's all brand new. I think it was at Lee jeans that they'd tied up with for this thing. I mean, the back's almost a better cover than the front. And I don't know if it was a promo or whatever, but this is the US version that I've got of Blue for You. And it kind of says a lot. The bit where you can see them is this bit. Because it just, I mean, Rick Parfitt's a good looking guy. He's a bit of a dish on the front of this album, but it's not a great look. Quo are, whatever way you want to look at it, just stupidly big over here. It's quite difficult to state just how big Status Quo were here and for such a length of time. Worldwide, the US didn't get them, but worldwide, and we're talking units, not albums, not singles, but this is people buying their product. Over 120 million units shifted worldwide. They have more hit singles in the British charts than any other act, which is just bonkers. 64 hit singles over here, 22 got in the top 10. It is just stupid. They spent 7.5 weeks, 7.5 years, 415 weeks in the British single charts. 7.5 years.
A long time.
Is it any wonder why it felt like they were just there all the time, which is probably why they get quite so much stick now. The only band that's had more hit albums than them in the UK is the Rolling Stones. Quo had 32 hit albums. And they were the first band to have top 20 hits in the UK across 5 different decades from the 60s onwards. Just absolutely bonkers. So why would a band like that then not translate
Because
in the
that's dominance when you think
isn't
about
it?
it. So, right, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if we're going to come up with any other examples in this show of a band that was so enormous in one side or the other, and it didn't even trickle a little bit. Because they were nothing. If I were to if I were to go to the supermarket today and randomly ask 10 people who are in the kind of 35 to 60 or 70 age group, it's like, do you know the band Status Quo? I guarantee you 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, would have no clue.
Yeah,
Zero.
absolutely. And to put it in context, in the UK top 40 singles charts, the Beatles had 38 singles that got into the UK top 40. Status Quo had 57. It's like,
Crazy, right?
that's wild. I'm not suggesting the Quo are
And
better
why did
than
one
the Quo, by the
translate
way.
and the other didn't? I mean, I think honestly, I mean, we'll probably talk more in depth about this. I think maybe is their music a little bit too one-dimensional, maybe for American
The
ears?
problem is, see, that's an interesting thing. This band took me into one of those rabbit holes, and I have lifted 5 or 6 quotes from the humongous amount of discussion online on this very topic on status quo, because I quite liked some of them. Because some of them made me laugh, some of them made me think, some of them made me disagree. But there's things like America likes nonsense hard rock better than no nonsense hard rock. And that I quite liked that. Because initially you think,
Because there's
oh,
no gimmick to this music, right?
there's
It's just
no gimmick.
it's boogie rock, right? There's no
Absolutely.
flashy guitar solos, there's
Yes.
no makeup, there's no costumes,
Yeah.
there's none of that. There's no gimmicks.
And the next quote, perfect segue. Bands like Floyd, Queen and the Stones were caviar rock and roll. Quo or fish and chips rock and roll. And I've got all their albums sitting behind me here. I love Status Quo. I am not here talking them down. Someone just said, no razzmatazz. I like Quo would turn up to a show wearing their everyday blue denim and get changed into stage denim. And it's just that kind of thing. Do you know? They're too obvious and too subtle at exactly the same time. I like that one too, because actually, they're not playing the same stuff over and over and over. It really isn't that. And what they do is much more complex than they were ever given credit for. But they allowed themselves to be sold as just this boogie band that just did a few chords and really don't know what they're doing, and it's just knocked together and there's no thought by it. They are really good songwriters. You can't have, bye Simon, you can't have,
Hi.
I appear to be talking to a meadow. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Simon. Yeah. Anyway, you can't have that many hits. And they were, as Simon said, you know what? They were big in Germany. They were ginormous basically everywhere apart from the US and, to be fair, Japan. You can't have that many hits and just write the same hit over and over. You can maybe do that with 5 or 6. You can maybe do that with 10 or 15. You can't do it once you start hitting 57.
Yeah, true.
You know? Because eventually people will kind of go, come on now, get real. But, and I think the crux of an awful lot of this is Quo did try to break America. Some of these acts that we're going to talk about never tried to do the other side of the pond. Quo tried. They did tour the US. They were there a lot between 73 and 76, and they tried again later on. But to break the US, you have to say, do you know what? We're going to dedicate ourselves to this. If you're not going to have a gimmick and you're not going to get lots of radio play, which they didn't, you're going to have to just grind it out.
And spend 8, 10, 12 months here. Just play
Absolutely.
every
Well,
shithole and every town, and right? That's
arguably longer, as we'll come to with the next band I'm going to talk about, because the next band I'm going to talk about tried that too. Didn't work. But there you go. And I do think that the image plays a large part of it. The US audience, especially, I would suggest, back in the 70s, they were looking for an Alice Cooper. They were looking for, even a ZZ Top have got a gimmick. There's something on the go here, whether it's a beard or whatever it may be, the hats. Quo had the denim. And over here, it made them recognisable and very much kind of, whoa, that's Quo on the telly because look, there's 4 guys wearing denim. But it does just make them look like 4 guys on the street if you're not into it and you don't know what's going on. Do you know? And I've recently got the expanded Quo Live set that came out, and listening to Francis Rossi, who is one of the best frontmen ever on stage. He's so natural, he's so just off the cuff, he's just being who he is, but he's just being who he is. It's all absolutely worked out. He's saying the same roughly thing night after night, but it just sounds like this geezer up on stage, fumbling through his words, forgetting what album the song comes from, just talking the way that he talks all the time, and it just maybe doesn't translate. There's no kind of pizzazz about that if you're not on this side of the pond, I would guess. It just doesn't really connect at all. So put it all together and people kind of write them off before they started, I think.
Yeah.
Because musically, for me, they had it. But the US audience does not think so. They don't just talk about gimmicks and clothes, they talk about the music all being the same. But listen to the albums and it's not. There
Yeah.
you go.
Well, we're a half hour in. We only covered two bands. We probably should have done a two-parter for this one.
Well, let's do a two-part for this. Let's not do all 10.
We'll see how it goes. Well, because this is a very fascinating topic, and I think there's a lot to cover with every single band, including the next one. So I'm wearing the shirt for a reason. So Grand Funk Railroad is going to be my first choice for today of a band that was enormous here for a number of years. From about 1969 through maybe 75, 74, 75 thereabouts. Then the popularity started to wane. They were historically a band here that the critics hated, absolutely hated, but the youth of this country absolutely loved them. However, over where you guys come from, nothing, really nothing. So their first 9 studio albums, and if you want to include the first live album, their first 10 albums went gold or platinum plus. So we're starting with On Time, Grand Funk Railroad, the Red Album, what it's often called, Closer to Home. Here's the live album, Survival, E Pluribus Funk, Phoenix, We're an American Band, Shining On, and All the Good Girls in the World Beware. That's kind of where it's like the last of their really successful albums. Although I would argue that Born to Die should have been just as successful as these, but it didn't quite happen because it's coming a little later on. No certifications in the UK, barely any charting there either. And I think there's a reason for that. If you dig deep into the history of Grand Funk Railroad, a lot of their songs were very much geared towards the American youth of the time. So at the time, of course, we got the Vietnam War. We've got a lot of stuff dealing with the environment, anti-establishment, problems that teenage youths are going through, but it's all very America focused. So we've got songs like People Let's Stop the War, Save the Land. They did a cover of Gimme Shelter, which by the Stones, which became very popular here. We're an American band, right? It's all about America. A lot of the stuff is geared towards teenage males. I also think that their music was very raw, especially early, raw and primitive, which I think was kind of the thing here at the time. You mentioned Alice Cooper before. We can talk about the MC5, the Stooges, right? All these other Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, right? All these other bands, Blue Cheer, Amboy Dukes, these like some are British, but mostly American bands that were coming up that all had that kind of loud, raw, garage rock, heavy sound. Whereas a lot of the bands that were more popular in the UK at the time, you got Bowie and T-Rex and Mott the Hoople and all this more glam pop art rock oriented type of music. So there's a sophistication factor, I think, here as well. Um, and I think we could say it the other way around for, I'll say it a million times in this episode, probably. Some of the bands from the UK that didn't make it here were a little too British sounding. I think Grand Funk Railroad were too American sounding, right? A little bit too far, you know? I mean, there was other bands that did well that came from here, but I think this was a US phenomenon. I think basically they were fairly popular in Canada. For some reason, Australia too picked up on them, but most of Europe, they didn't do anything there either. They also barely played in the UK. They didn't make it over there. They played the big Hyde Park show with Humble Pie in 1971, already 2+ years into the height of their popularity here, and overall did not go back there much at all. It's funny, like all the bands that I'm going to talk about today, I went back and looked at like all of their gigs from when they started all throughout the 70s into the early 80s, and all three of them basically ignored the UK and Europe till much later in the decade of the 70s going into the 80s. And by then, I think the UK was kind of like, who cares about them? They never come over here. Nobody plays their music here. That was as far as they were going to go. So I think from my perspective, Grand Funk Railroad, too American, too raw, maybe no singles pushed, right? Because you guys are big on the singles. And I don't know if any of their songs, other than maybe stuff off of We're an American Band or a couple albums afterwards, I could see, and maybe that song did a little bit, maybe like, The Locomotion and maybe a couple other Walk Like a Man or something like that might have been, pushed a little bit more than they were. But I think this was strictly an American phenomenon. I could totally see why they didn't do big over there. But they were massive here. They were really massive here for a good 5-6 years. But it only played out here, unfortunately.
I know basically nothing about them at all.
Wow. Okay.
That tells you.
Have you ever like dove into their catalog at all?
So
I think both of you would find lots to like in this catalog.
what I've heard makes me kind of go,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't really get the juices flowing.
Yeah, I love them. But I've been a fan for a long, long time.
Hmm.
I would you've probably heard the We're an American Band album, right?
Yeah.
That's a little bit more slick.
Heard the song, but not the. I mean, I've heard the song by other artists, but not by the funk.
Really?
I've never heard a note of Grand Funk Railroad knowingly. Not once, not ever.
Wow.
See,
Oh,
there's no coverage for them here at all, Pete. I prefer cover versions of their music than what I've heard of them. But there you go.
all right. I'm gonna recommend a couple of early albums that you guys need to listen to. Yeah. Wow, that's crazy because they were so big here. But again, it's like the status.
Fine. That
I
that is
I own like 10 status quo CDs. I've been listening to them for a while. I mean, I'm not always a huge fan, but I do like them. But yeah, I think there's a lot in this catalog that you guys probably would like if you took the plunge a little bit. So, but we'll see. We'll see. I'll try. Hey, everybody, I turned Steven onto Brainstorm just recently, so
absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a totally
great.
different beast than this, but you know. So yeah, Grand Funk Railroad. Back to Simon.
Yes. Okay. There is one artist, and Stephen knows where I'm going with this. One artist that people constantly get in touch with me about. Constant, more than any other artist, even more than, oh, you don't like Van Halen, or why do you hate Aerosmith? There's one artist that people get in touch with me about directly, and that artist is Cliff Richard. Oh my God. I don't know. I think I must have at one point said, I like a bit of, I like certain of Cliff's albums, and I do. I do. So I've decided to bring Cliff into the SLT paradigm, and he's going to be going to be turning up again in a few weeks' time, isn't he, Stephen? I know you're thrilled by it.
Yeah.
Utterly, utterly thrilled by that. Um, and Cliff is an absolute national treasure.
I wondered where you were going with that.
Well, yeah, he did have his problems, didn't he? But no, he is an absolute national treasure over here, isn't he? He's been churning out the hits since the late 1950s.
A long time.
Yep, still touring occasionally in the here and now. He's in his about 83 now, maybe. Still going. And at times just absolutely enormous over here. And he has made some of the biggest crap in the history of mankind. Some of his stuff is absolutely appalling. It's incomprehensibly bad. And these were most of his number one hits, but that's not important. Important right now. Oh God, he got to the point where he just churned out Christmas stuff that was beyond terrible. But anyhow, um, so he's been having hits since the late 50s, and there was a period in the mid to late 1970s to the early 1980s where he just kind of like clawed a bit of credibility from the rock cognoscenti, as it were, and from about 75 to 1980-ish. And he kind don't look at me like that, Steve. I'm ignoring you because I'm going to read my notes. Yes, I am. He was in. I just cannot tell you how big he was in the UK. Can we not, Stephen? We cannot tell you. You know, Living Doll was number one in 1959, made about 30 in America. That's pretty much it for the next 16 years. Devil Woman was nine in America, but sorry, nine in the UK. It's six in America. Yeah, see, we get thumbs up there, don't we?
I
Because
like
it's
Devil Women. I like Devil Women a lot.
Devil Woman is great.
Yeah.
cheering, isn't it? We Don't Talk Anymore. It was number one in the UK, and, number seven in America. Carrie, number four in the UK, 34 in America. Dreaming, eight in the UK, 10 in America. So we had some hits in America. But A Little in Love made 17 in America. The album, right? So there are four hit singles on this album. Four hit singles. It's a great album, apart from the last track, which is absolutely awful. Massive hit, Daddy's Home. Terrible. It's so bad. It's just it's poke my ears out bad. But four American hits on this album. The album made 132 in the United States. So you can have some degree of popularity and yet be completely unknown, can't you? I remember reading an interview with him saying I could walk down New York City and any street in New York and I'd be completely anonymous and that's fantastic and I can't do that in the UK. Why did he not make it? Apart from the fact that he did pump out a colossal amount of shite. He really, and he went through a very long period of not being that popular in the UK until We Don't Talk Anymore really hit the big time in 1979. But he was the British Elvis. So did America need another Elvis?
No, no, I think he was very inconsistent here. Like, I don't think like he was never like an album guy here. He was like a guy who every bunch of years would have a popular song and people like, oh, this song is great. I mean, I think I told the story before, but it's fairly recent too. About a month ago, I went to go see Queensryche with a friend of mine and Lynn Versace and two of her girlfriends. And coming back, we were listening to like yacht rock radio on Sirius XM, and We Don't Talk Anymore came on. And a couple of the ladies were like, "Oh, I love this song, but I have no idea who this is." I'm like, "Oh, it's Cliff Richard." Like, I don't know who Cliff Richard is. And I said, "Do you know Devil Woman?" It's like, "Oh, that's a great song." Well, that's Cliff Richard. Oh, I love both these songs. I had no clue who that guy who did Cliff Richard is or who sang it. That's him in America.
Yeah.
He's like a nobody who released a couple big songs and that was it.
I'm just on record as saying that the outro guitar of We Don't Talk Anymore is absolutely fantastic. It really is. Just want to get that on record. Even by the time of the British invasion, he was old hat.
Yeah.
So I would say going back to the core, Stephen, that if the core are going to make it, they're going to make it in that initial period before the end of the road.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
before let's be honest, they started pumping out some crap as well, didn't they?
Oh, yes.
They're going to make it then. So, Cliff didn't make it in his youthful period. Although, he's always looked suspiciously youthful, hasn't he? Even now, it's got much
You
more
could,
hair.
you could argue he's always just looked suspicious.
Well, I'm not going to do that because he's quite litigious. But anyhow, um, he's got a very clean living persona, despite what
See,
Stephen says.
excuse me interrupting you, Simon. That was what I was going to actually mention is you see he was the UK's Elvis. Elvis was a game changer. He was a game changer because, and with hindsight, you don't see it, but he was dangerous. Do you know, it was, oh, don't look at him. That's, oh my goodness. You'll lose your virginity if you look at him. Don't
Elvis.
do that, young lady. Do you know? But Cliff Richard has no danger about him. Zero, zilch, none. Do you know? I mean, he's made it like foam. He just kind of melts away to nothing. Do you know what I mean? It's just, it's that's never going to translate.
Probably not. Probably not.
Well, had hits,
Yeah,
but still an unknown. So, the nature of success is quite interesting in and of itself, isn't it? Well, that's the what one, two, three top US top 10 singles. When singles actually people when people bought them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's quite impressive. But this is his market where we are, isn't it? And I think is he big in Australia like Suzie Quatro? I think he is. Just didn't translate in any way, shape, or form. Anyway, before we move on, who wants a trivia question?
Oh, absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, so Cliff recorded a song called Heart User on this album, The Rock Connection, which is the least rocking album in the history of mankind. Makes the Birdie
You
song
even got the leather jacket going, and it's like, yeah.
makes the Birdie song look like Slayer. So Heart User, Heart User. Who else recorded the song Heart User in a slightly less rocking way? I'll just pause while the people put it in the comments. That's right, Paul Di'Anno.
Hold that album back up again, Simon. Can you all picture Paul Di'Anno's face in that shot? I can.
I can actually, yeah. I can. The hair for
Go,
definite.
go to YouTube, put them up against each other. There are live versions of each of them out there, and there you go, fact fans.
Wow. Who would have thought?
There
Cliff
you go.
Richard and Paul Di'Anno in the same sentence. All right.
It all makes sense, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
right. Totally.
It's just
There
what
you
we do on
go.
this channel, isn't it?
Yes.
Joining the dots here. Joining the
Yes.
Absolutely.
The dotted line continues.
So we've all done research on hits and how successful bands were and various other things like that. I didn't do this for my neck deck because I picked up a greatest hits CD by this next band and answered the question myself without any hesitation of to why Slade did not make it big in the US. Because they tried. They decamped to the US. They played there a lot. They spent a long time trying to break that market. They did it, tried it more than once. Do you know? And what it ended up doing was kind of stymieing the career over here because everybody went, "Oh, those guys want to be Yanks now. We don't want those people here." You don't do that. You don't do that here because people just write you off. That's definitely if you're not interested in us, well, we're not interested in you. And they clawed it back somewhat for a period of time, but they tried it again, and people did the same sort of thing with them. But Slade looked like this. Okay, I don't need to say much more than that. I really like Slade, by the way. Okay, this is not me kind of going up my
You
shit.
don't. You don't.
But look, it's. I mean, it's just the bizarrest thing. I mean, nobody
But yet,
holds
to
us.
be honest, the Village People were huge there. Have you seen what the Village People
Yeah,
looked like around that
the
time?
village people were trying to do something different. Come on, you're not going to do dance moves to squeeze me, please me. Do you know what I mean? It's not quite the same thing.
I know.
And they just look. The village people looked intentionally ridiculous.
Yes.
You were meant to be in on that joke. Do you
And
know?
people here love intentionally ridiculous stuff. Let's just be frank.
This is unintentionally ridiculous.
Right.
In the UK, this arguably was cool. Okay, hindsight's a wonderful thing, people. I mean, Noddy Holder's sideburns on their own are just enough to keep a lot of people at arm's length. Do you know, he just looks like your pissed granddad wearing some kind of leftover circus hat that's got mirrors on it. Do you know, most of his suits look like somebody's torn up an old sofa and just sewn it together. Yes, Uncle Simon.
Noddy Holder's mirrored top hat is the coolest garment or piece of millinery of all time. And I will die on that hill.
Do you know, I would allow you to die on that hill wearing the hat.
Thank you. I'm prepared to do that.
And I'll even switch on the lights so it can reflect off them. There you go. You can be your very own mirror ball.
Just to interrupt you for 1 second, for people of my age and people that grew up in the 70s, which were a bit shit over here, really was, 3-day weeks and all that kind of stuff, and outages and stuff like that. Let's not forget the racism. But Slade were just like wow, look at that. Slade are, outside my family, the earliest thing I remember. Slade on top of the Pops.
Yeah.
Absolute earliest memory of anything that I've got.
I am not suggesting for a single second that they weren't the coolest thing in the world. And to a certain time and place and to a certain audience. But there's a whole load of contradiction going on because Don Powell looks like the kind of guy that if he sneezed, he would just take your head clean off. Do you know, he's like, the amount of aggression that's there, and yet somehow he seems to be dressed as if he wants to be a trapeze artist or something like that. Then every now and again he turns up as if he's a musketeer, you know, with a little foil and a hat with a feather on top. Well, what are we doing? What exactly are we doing? And with Dave Hill, I mean, sometimes he's wearing a kimono. Sometimes he appears to be wearing a kid's spaceman suit. He is not Space Ace. And that's the thing. That's the thing. The US want Space Ace Frehley. Okay, the UK want this guy with a haircut like that. Right? Officially the worst haircut in rock music. I'm sorry, Dave. It is. It's just terrible. Do you know? And it all just seemed so budget. So we went down to the bring and buy sale, and this is what we came back with. And it almost feels to me like Jim Lee actually knew that. Yes, he's wearing shiny suits. Is it leather? Probably not. It's probably some plastic that they could afford, and that's what you have to be wearing. It's meant to look like a red leather suit. Sometimes he's wearing a leather jacket with a sheepskin collar or just plain old denim. Jim Lee's looking at them and going, I'm not really with those guys. And that's kind of where it's at that point. And as I say, over here, it was cool. They were the coolest thing in the world. But I can imagine a US audience just looking at them and going, is this for real? Is this actually for real? These guys mean this? Do you know, the songs are quite good, but are they taking the piss? Is that what's happening here? And then you add in that they intentionally can't spell a single song. Okay? Come on, Feel the Noise. It's got too many U's. It's got Z's. You've got Mama, We're All Crazy Now. Look what you done. Squeeze me, please. And I love this stuff. To me, this is absolute genius. It's absolute genius. You look at the back of these albums and you go, oh, these guys were so clever. And then there's stuff like Give Me a Goal. I mean, Give Me a Goal is so British, it's unbelievable. You know? And I think the issue for Slade, much so how hard they tried, I mean, it just everywhere you look, they just look vaguely ridiculous. Do you know? And hindsight is a wonderful thing. I'm slagging off people's childhood here and all this kind of stuff. I adore Slade. I like the lean years. I like the really good years that everyone loves. I like it all. But I can understand how hokey it might have come across to an audience that maybe were used to something that if they were sold glam rock, it was maybe slightly glamorous. And whether you think Slade are cool or not, I don't think you can suggest they looked glamorous.
Mm. No. Well, but rather like Cliff, Noddy in particular has gone on to national treasure status again, hasn't he?
Absolutely.
The absolute outpouring of love when people found out that he'd had cancer was astonishing, wasn't it?
Yeah. But
Really?
they're a mainstay of every Christmas over here. Every Christmas. I mean, everybody, no matter what your age is over here, knows Slade. Do you know? It's so yeah. And he's a national treasure. Absolutely. And rightly so.
But people in America were listening, weren't they? Looking at you, Paul Stanley, looking at you, Gene Simmons, looking at you, Mr. DeBrow. Well, I would do, but
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, they were revered by people in the know.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
But did those people take that essence of Slade and kind of twist it around and Americanize it a little bit? I think that's kind of the key here, right?
Yes.
They're very parochial, aren't they?
Yeah, very. Very. Yeah.
I mean, I'll be the first to say I've tried. Slade don't do anything for me. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I like, and I've always had an issue. Are they really like part of that whole glam rock scene? I mean, I know a lot of people like to lump them in there, but like I'll listen to Bowie or Silverhead or T-Rex or Mott the Hoople over Slade any day. I've tried because I keep seeing, me, I like a lot of stuff. I'm like, I should really like this band. And I try. I'm kind of like, ugh, just don't get it.
I would absolutely take Slade over all those bands.
All of those, right? And I
a very, very long way.
Yeah.
And Mr. Too. Yeah.
And that's most people I talk to from the UK say that. And yet you talk to people here in the US and they're kind of like, yeah, I don't know, that Slade thing. It's like, oh, but Come On, Feel the Noise is a great song. Yeah, well, it's
I think
the Quiet Riot version, right? It doesn't have
there's a difference
that, right?
between. I think arguably for a lot of this, there's a difference between what a US audience calls sophistication and we arguably call pretension. And I think that's maybe a difference in outlook as opposed to as in what the act is doing themselves.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I mean, I don't have an issue with stuff being not sophisticated. I mean, shit, I talked about Grand Funk Railroad before. They're not sophisticated at all until they
No, no,
hook
no. But
the
I'm not
road.
suggesting that you guys needed sophistication. I think that you looked at some stuff that we thought was pretentious and thought, wow, that's sophisticated.
Well, yeah. I mean, case in point, look at some of the Kinks material from that same time period. That went right over everybody's heads here too.
Hmm.
Way too English, too weird. I think there are similarities, not that the music sounds the same, but I think there's elements of both bands, and we could probably pull up a hell of a lot more where it just doesn't appeal to American audiences.
Yeah. I mean, I would even go as far as a Scotsman to suggest that those two acts, Slade and the Kinks, are very English. This makes me say I don't love them both because I do, but they're very English. It really is parochial. It's even more so.
Yeah.
These guys are proud of exactly where they come from, and so they should be.
And see, like I'm hit or miss with like the Sensational Alex Harvey band too. I like some of their stuff,
Like
but
them.
on the whole, they don't really connect with me. And to me, if I listen to Slade, I'm getting similar vibes there. I don't know.
I can understand why. It's, as we say, it's difficult to join the dots in actual fact.
Yeah.
But I do
It's strange though.
absolutely.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's strange for me. I mean, because generally speaking, as you know, most of my favorite bands of all time are from the UK. So to me, when I come across a couple that like just aren't hitting for me for whatever reason, I don't get it, and I really question why because I generally like British, UK, English music a lot and bands in the rock category. So it's like, the fact that Slade doesn't connect with me is kind of perplexing. I mean, you can't like everything, right? But still, it's
But
like,
you can't. Is it down to how hard the hard rock is? Does that make sense? Because
yeah,
I would suggest that I would suggest that the little I know of Suzie Quatro, I would suggest certainly that Slade, they're hard rock acts, but they're not hard rock acts.
no,
Whereas most of the bands that that's a very, very, very small amount of the UK bands you like, Pete, but those bands that you deeply love, they're hard rock acts.
they are.
And that's maybe the slight difference.
Yeah.
Whereas in terms of pop music, these were hard rock acts over here. Quo and Slade, massive success in the charts. Purple and Sabbath and all this sort of thing. We're a different world. So it does make sense that some of it translates and some of it doesn't.
Yeah. It's an interesting conundrum, right?
Mhm.
It really is when you stop to think about this. And Gary Joyce, I know you're watching. Please put it in record that Simon Bray has stated emphatically that Noddy Holder's hat is the greatest garment ever in the history of rock music. And Gary, if you want to get it back up to make sure that's noted, please do that. So
Thing is,
I'll remember that one.
he will, he will, he will, he will, he will, he will. He's done it already. It
Love it.
hasn't even gone out yet. So he will.
I'll be getting a text from Gary in a minute saying, "Thank you for mentioning me on the air. I'm going to do it. I'll figure out a way. He'll come up with something." I'm like, "All right, Gary, there you go. I knew we could count on you, Gary. You're not the principal for nothing, right? Earn your keep, my friend. Earn your keep. Got to make sure we notarize all of these crazy statements that we hear on this channel, right?
Or facts, as we like to call
Or
them.
facts. Yes, indeed. All right. Next up, we're going to go to Styx. All right. Very big band here for a number of years. 9 gold or platinum plus albums here in the States. Starting with, I believe, Styx 2 went gold, then it had a couple that didn't, but albums like Equinox and Crystal Ball, and certainly the Platinum Plus sellers like Grand Illusion and Pieces of Eight and Cornerstone and Paradise Theater, and yes, Simon's favorite album by them, Kilroy. Right? Kilroy was here. We're massive here. Ironically, only these three, Cornerstone, Paradise Theater, and Kilroy, did anything over by you guys. In fact, Paradise Theater was the only silver album in the UK. Now, I talked before talking Grand Funk Railroad about how Grand Funk just basically never went over there to tour. I think that in the 70s, I think you had to, even though it didn't really work with Slade like we just talked about, but I think that Styx basically ignored the UK and Europe in general. They did not tour over in your side of the pond until 1978. And then 1980, 1981, they started to make regular appearances over there. And I think once they started to regularly come about and show their faces over there, that's when all of a sudden albums started to sell. Probably singles got pushed and whatnot. But it's like you gotta make an appearance, right? You mentioned something very interesting before, Stephen, about how like UK bands, when they discovered that, well, to make it big, we got to spend time over in America. And a lot of times when they would forego playing back home and go over there, British audience was kind of like, oh, what do we chop liver? Because that happened with Judas Priest. Judas Priest, and I think Maiden did it as well too for a number of years, spent all their time over here, and UK audiences was like, you've given up on us. Well, we're going to go listen to something else. Well, I think that for a band like this that was doing so massive over here, you got to come over here. You come over here, you spend some time. We'll buy your albums. The radio stations will play you, and we'll make you something over here. And I think that was the case with Styx, because they kind of changed a little bit, but they were never as big over there as they were here. As far as the music goes, I think they're also very much an American band. I think there's an aura, not that I necessarily agree with it, but they've been tagged with of this kind of American corporate rock thing going on, right? They got some of the ballads, they got the heavy rock, they got the boogie, they got the prog. What do they really do? All the stuff. It's very varied sound. It's maybe a little bit too varied for some audiences. And bands from like the upper Midwest here in the States, I'm thinking like REO Speedwagon and a bunch of others that really got big here. Never really did much in the UK to begin with. But when you're touring year after year relentlessly here and you're spending all your time here and you're like, hi over there. Yeah, we'll get to you one of these days. The years go by very, very quickly. And I don't know if like Babe was a big hit over by you guys or Come Sail Away. Babe was probably the big hit, right? Because that album did really well over there. But like all the earlier stuff, didn't do anything over by you. Massive here. And it's just a shame that like the success of those couple of 80s albums in the UK didn't cross over into them investigating the back catalog much. Like that always happens here in the States when a band puts out a bunch of albums that don't really make much of an impact, then puts out a big album. Everybody here goes and buys all the other, goes and investigates all the other albums. I don't get that impression with some of these bands that I'm talking about today that had that one or two or three decent selling albums in the UK, but all those great albums that came before it didn't do anything. There was no kind of ripple effect that's like, oh, Cornerstone is great. I love this band. Oh, let me go check out Grand Illusion, Pieces of Eight, and Equinox or Crystal Ball. It didn't really happen. They kind of waited for the next one, bought the next one, maybe bought the next one, but all the earlier stuff, nothing. So I don't know if you guys have anything more to say on Styx from your perspective.
Is there an argument to be made about Styx that by the time Babe was a big hit over it reached top 10, um, they'd already made all their really great shit? Is that
You're,
argument?
you're kind of getting there,
I
even
mean,
as
there are people here would disagree because I know there's a lot of people who love Cornerstone and Paradise Theater, but most would probably say you are 100% correct because I wouldn't argue that Pieces of Eight, Grand Illusion, Crystal Ball, and Equinox, to me, that's their greatest stuff right there. And that's before when Babe became big.
Because Babe became big. And do you know what? I seldom get in Missy Simon's car when she's driving and don't hear Babe on Heart FM or, you know, whatever rubbish it is that's on in the car. But fairly shortly after that, they followed that up with Mr. Roboto. And I think we could feasibly suggest that that went down in certain places like a bag of sick, didn't it? And you look at that and you think, what, are they serious? And I'm a huge fan of the band, but you look at you. I remember that coming out, oh, right, okay, might not go to school tomorrow. Yeah, so. Hey, but in many ways they were too prog to be pop, to be rock, to be prog, pop to be rock, to be
Yeah.
prog. They did a little bit of too much of everything, and not they couldn't be pigeonholed. Although they are pigeonholed, by your critics over here as being, faceless, like Journey, Foreigner, Chicago, REO Speedwagon, Loverboy.
All those corporate rock bands that I talked about, right? Was there like an anti that
Yeah.
on your side? Yeah,
Right.
Well, the next band I'm going to talk about, I would say absolutely yes. Yeah, 100%.
all right. So we're an hour plus in. Question for the both of you. Do we want to do part two of this and reconvene 1 week from today? Because I mean, we have lots more to talk about. This actually has turned out to be a really, really great topic. Do we want? I'm totally fine. I know we don't normally do this on the fly like
As
this.
he reaches for his phone because he's no idea what day of the week it is, never mind what I'm doing next week.
What is the date next Wednesday? Because if it's the third, that's Mrs. Simon's birthday.
We could do it on the second.
It's the second.
I'll get back to you. But yeah, I think we need more time because otherwise it's
Yes,
going to be forever, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't want to rush. That's what I'm saying. I mean, we're
I
really
would agree.
digging in here, so it's
Yeah, I'm up for that.
Yeah,
okay.
we've give Gary too much work already, haven't we?
Yeah.
So
I
Yeah.
think it was after one band each that this was too many bands.
Well, and now technically we could even squeeze in another one or two if we wanted to. So, it's
Well, that's what I was going to say is that we've all got one each left and total, so we should probably all bring another one if we're inclined to.
yeah. Okay. All right. See, folks, we didn't plan this, but it's sometimes these conversations go in places that, like, we don't anticipate, and the topics turn out even better than we thought. So, all right. So, I mean, you guys are lucking out, right? Because you're getting a bonus UK episode. You don't have to wait 2 weeks. You'll just have to wait 1 week. So, in addition to the review crew next Saturday, you'll also get us in the afternoon or early evening, as it turns out in the UK. Part two of bands. What are we calling this damn thing anyway? UK and US bands who didn't did that their music didn't I don't know, we'll figure it out. But if you've been sitting with us for over an hour now, you know what the hell we're talking about. I'm only like three-quarters of the way through this beer and already I'm foaming my words. So, I knew that was gonna happen. Didn't I anticipate that? Yeah. So still to come, we've got Kansas, Journey,
Doobie Brothers
Doobie Brothers.
and Toto. That's the four we've still got to talk about.
Yeah.
And we'll
Um,
bring another one each as well, I would suggest. So,
could
I
we
mean,
squeeze in Magnum for the next episode?
I don't think Magnum are big enough here
Yeah,
for that.
maybe they weren't big enough.
You know, one album and two or three hits off that album
Yeah,
and gone, and that was it.
yeah.
I would. I think Kiss fit the bill, but I don't know. I'm not going to force that on anyone. I could also bring Marillion into this one as well. There's lots of options there, but we
I
can
think
talk about
Marillion.
that and decide it
Yeah, we'll
before.
figure it out. Yeah, we'll figure it out. So, all
Absolutely.
right. So, yeah. So part two to come 1 week from today, folks. Um, I kind of like when this kind of stuff happens because it means the conversation was really good. Yeah, I mean, I figured out we could knock this out in an hour. No, not happening, but some really good stuff. So for folks watching, if you care to comment on the bands we talked about so far, and what's really great about the folks who really watch this show is we have a great amount from the UK and a lot from here in the States too. So there's the two perspectives. So if you have any additional insights on what you think would reason plus or minus on some of these bands, why they didn't hit in the other territory or not, please put them down in the comments below. And any experiences you have with seeing the band, not hearing the band on the radio, or maybe you're someone who radio notwithstanding, you went and bought these albums and you were totally into these bands, even though the rest of your countrymen were not doing so. So that'd be cool to hear that as well. So Simon's Dogs just made an appearance. Kermit, look out. It's coming after you. Coming after you, baby. Oh man. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube all together, all the damn time, and on Instagram now too. So don't forget, if you're watching this and you have Instagram, Peter Pardo SOT, that is our new Instagram account. All sorts of channel related stuff will be popping up on there. So come follow us. And for Simon Bray and Steven Reid, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching. Part two coming at you 1 week from today. So stay tuned for that. And we'll see you soon, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.